right. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to bring the lovely Tammy Dunnett to us today. She's going to be speaking all about how to confidently handle difficult conversations. But first, I just want to welcome Tammy to the summit and all of you listeners and watchers out there. Welcome to the Sweet Spot Global Leadership Summit, where we are talking all week about how organizations and leaders can thrive from the inside out. And I know that your topic today, Tammy, is really going to align with that. So I'm super excited to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for having this space where these important conversations can happen. And I just want to also, before we get too far into it, just thank you for all the work. I know how much work goes into these, for assembling this and putting this all together.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's kind of fun, honestly, but it is a big project, but perfect time of year, I find, to have something to do inside where it's cold and drizzly and all of that out there. So just to introduce Tammy to all of you, she's an ex-target of workplace bullying and a founder of Relationship Revolution, which just sounds amazing. I like that title. And Tammy is really changing the way relationships are being done, one conversation at a time. And I'm really excited to dive into this with you, Tammy, because I think difficult conversations, whether it's with a colleague or a staff member or even in your personal life, can be really easy to avoid. I know I used to, and I used to just think, oh, now's not the good time, I'll do it later. And then the later never came, and that wasn't really good for me. And so I learned over the years addressing things is helpful. Sooner and then they're smaller, it's easier. But I'd love to hear about how you find organizations and leaders can really confidently handle the difficult conversations. And I know you have 5 steps that you want to share with us today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you brought up such an important piece, is that it is easier. A lot of the times that's the route we'll take because it feels like the lesser of the two evils. Do I say something
to avoid it?
Yeah. Just like not engage with it. But as you mentioned, you notice that these things continue to fester, and then they'll start to stack, and then eventually someone's going to blow, and we're going to be like, what happened to Sarah?
Right, exactly.
She's not showing any signs. So having a conversation is so important when the moment needs it, when it arises, and not to wait too long afterwards.
So I wonder, maybe we can actually talk about that, because how do you know? Because previously I would say, oh, tired, oh, this person, something's going on, now is not a good time. And so I almost rationalized when the time was going to be right. So how would you know when that something maybe needs to be talked about? And that might be a good place to start.
It's a great question. And I did the same. And I think that's somewhat in how we're cultured to deal with conflict, is to, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything nice, or don't say anything at all, sorry. But also to try and understand the other's perspective. And we do rationalize a lot away, and it's partly to give us permission to not engage. But if you can't walk away and honestly let it go, then that's a conversation you need to have.
Okay. So if it's staying with you, it's not something that's okay, no big deal, and tomorrow you're not thinking about it anymore.
Yeah, because you know, sometimes we're just in moods. We're hangry. Maybe we had a bad day. Maybe we're thinking about some other priorities, and we just don't have the capacity to deal with what's come to us. And so sometimes we also can be rude and offensive. The intention isn't to bully somebody, but it's just what's happening in the moment. So if you walk away and you're like still bothered by it the next day, the next day, the next day, and you're avoiding this person or you're starting to gossip about them, then you know that that's a conversation you need to have. But if you can truly let it go and say, you know what, I'm going to forgive them, or I understand they were having a bad day, you can justify your release, and it's good, then you've probably got a situation where you can actually walk away from it and not let it bother you.
Oh, that's wow. I wish I'd had that measurement years ago. It probably would have saved me a lot. But I like that as a measurement to say, if it's still hanging around there for a few days, then there's something obviously needs to be dealt with, versus it was a minor thing or a one-off case, then that's very different. So I know it kind of took us off on a tangent right away. So maybe that's not the way you start, but how do you know when you have to have a difficult conversation? So that's a great takeaway. Thank you.
Yeah, in my model, I call it, so like, we said the word avoiding. I don't actually use those labels. I encourage people to put those labels aside: the avoider, the accommodator, the indirect, passive aggressive, aggressive assertive. Those labels were useful for a time. What I have found is that people now use them as a destination. and they put that label on like it's, their best coat, and it is not coming off of them, right? If I'm an avoider, there's no way I'm going to have that hard conversation. So in my model, that's the pausing energy. And so I always call it pause and release. If you can't pause and release and you still have it with you, then you have to have the conversation.
I wonder if you can tell us more about that pause, because I think that's a crucial piece as well.
Yeah, okay, there's 2 questions for the model.
Okay.
One is, are you in fight or flight when you're in conflict? Because we all have a natural tendency, we will go in one direction. I am a fighter, so I will go towards the conflict. Many people are flighters and move away. That's okay. Just to notice your reaction. And then there's your interaction. Are you talking about the issue or not talking about the issue? So the person who's moving away from the conflict and not talking about the issue, those are the ones who are pausing. They need space and time away to de-escalate, to figure out what their next step is going to be, how they're going to create safety to come back in. The one who's moving away from it and talking about it, those are the ones who are hinting. They might be joking. They might be using sarcasm.
Oh, I know many people in the workplace that do that. And they say, no, it's fine, but obviously it's not fine.
Exactly. So they're attempting to talk about it, but they don't know how to do it in a way that's going to be beneficial.
Okay.
They're doing their best. They just aren't doing a very good job at connecting. And so then we have the other side, the fighters. So the fighters who are talking, those are my speaking and sharing. That's my quadrant. That's where I naturally go to. We have all the answers. And then we have those who are going towards the conflict, but they don't have to talk about the issue, and they've often never been represented in conflict engagement. These are the doing. These are the ones who are going to like bring a heater into the office. If you're always cold and they're always hot, they're going to solve the problem, but they don't have to talk about it, but there's still a conflict.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate you highlighting that, because that's not a personality sort of category I really have thought about before. So how would we understand if somebody is that? There's conflict within them or within their environment, perhaps?
So the best thing I can share with you is that we are actually a blend of all of them. There are times when you want to move away and not talk. There are times where you're not certain what to say and you're kind of hinting and hoping and maybe putting a little jab in there. You know that they're probably going to pick it up, but there's times when you're confident to speak and there's times when you just solve. So we know all of those quadrants, which is why the labels are not effective, because when I'm an avoider and I'm in my camp, I can't see that I have these other energies in me.
Yes, and you kind of almost stay stuck in those behaviors. Absolutely. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's a good point to say that we can be all of these 4 quadrants depending on the circumstances or how we're approaching things.
And you need to be, but you actually need to go through all of them in conflict resolution. So me as a strong speaking, if you and I are in conflict, I'm talking, right? Let's solve the problem. Let's figure it out. Let's find some solutions. But if you're saying the pausing energy, that's the last thing you want to do is talk. You need space.
Right. And I've heard that dynamic a lot in my chats with girlfriends over the years. So one party wants to talk about, the other party just needs to think about it and go away. And that could be quite challenging as well. Oh, so many things to talk about.
I know. And it's so great though, because when you know which quadrant you naturally go to, you know what you need to come back to safety. So for those who go through the training, like say pausing, they know they need it to be safe for them to come back. I'm a speaking energy. I need to be validated. So if you're in pausing, you can just validate me and say, I hear what you're saying. It sounds important. You don't have to agree. But you just have to drain me of my ideas and thoughts for me to get quiet, to make it safe for me to come in.
So when somebody's in there that's speaking, talking energy, there's acknowledgement, then that allows that speaking to be heard and land.
Yeah.
Receive. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a superpower when you recognize those quadrants for yourself and you go, okay, when I was here, this is what I needed. When I was asking questions, I didn't feel certain. I needed information.
Right.
So if I got someone who's asking a lot of questions, I can just go, okay, I need to come over here and say, there's something I'm not sharing with you. How can I support you and make you feel comfortable so that we can move forward?
Wow. This is really enlightening. Thank you. And I find having these types of models makes it easy to remember and to apply in the moment as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what's so important though is you have to go through them all. So as I'm speaking, I recognize my husband's very different. I will be like, oh, I didn't even stop to like pause my own ideas here and hear his ideas. I have to come in, actively choose to come into pausing energy so that we
Mhm.
can move through the whole model. Mhm.
So what do you mean by moving through the whole model? Does a conflict or sort of a heated situation need to have all these phases to be productive, or
To be successful.
okay?
Yeah. So you need to pause, park perceptions. You need to understand what people are bringing to the table. You need to ask questions, get curious. You need to share your thoughts and ideas so that you can explore options. And then you got to
Mm.
do. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone is identifying as only one type, then you're not going to move through the resolution process.
Yeah. Right. Because
Mm.
doers, they want you to trust them. And if I can't get them to talk to me and share with me their thoughts, then we're always going to be in tension because they're just going to solve. And I'm going to be over here wondering, oh my God, I don't know what they're doing. I've
Because
got
they haven't heard
questions.
you. Yeah, interesting. So how would that look in a work environment? I'm wondering if you could maybe give us an example of how that could be applied.
Sure. I'll share an example of a lady. I'm going to give a different name just to protect her identity. She hasn't given me permission to use her name. So we'll say Margaret. She's a
Mhm.
strong pausing energy. Like she was in conflict with somebody else, and her best solution, her no clear plan solution, I call it, was to quit, find a new job.
Mm.
Because that's as far away as you can get. Right.
Right.
I'm not talking about
Yes.
it. I'm not engaging. I'm just going to leave. It took a lot of conversations and work with her to see that she could actually use her strength of distance to create a plan to come in and ask questions first. We always want to understand them first. So we move her into the asking and understanding. And we do a lot of practice of what those kind of questions might look like so that they don't create defense. We want to be able to open up the
Yes.
conversation so it doesn't create defense, but it creates opportunity.
Hmm.
So she goes in, she starts with her asking and understanding. And once she feels she has enough information, she then asks permission to share what she was experiencing. And then she shared her solutions, the other lady. I got to witness it and listen to it all, which was beautiful. And so from a really strong resistance place, she was able to walk through all those stages with confidence.
That's huge. And I think the lack of confidence is the reason why these things don't get resolved. You know, it's easier to just be upset with somebody and leave it, especially in the workplace. I think I've seen many people over the years have issues and just kind of try to just handle it's not the right word, put up with it maybe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that can make it hard when you have to go work with these people in and out,
Yeah.
on and
100%.
on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the great resignation. Well, I'll just leave and go find another job. I'll tell you, when
Mm-hmm.
I was a target of bullying, I thought that was the answer too.
Well, of course,
So
because
I left.
yeah, okay.
I emotionally healed. But when the next moment came up, because it will follow you until you learn the lesson. In the new job, 2 years later, similar situation. And I'm like, I have to be the one that changes here. I need to learn something about myself here
Mm-hmm.
because this is a pattern now. And so if you don't take that moment, right, if you choose to leave, I mean, that may be the right choice. I don't, you have to make that decision for you. But if you choose to leave, you've got to do the work so you don't get in that
Yeah,
position again.
exactly. And I believe that in other areas of life too. You know, I mean, if we're facing something, it's probably an opportunity to learn, you know, and grow and be able to not continue to have a repetitive kind of scenario with that. Yeah. So we're talking kind of generally. I know you wanted to perhaps talk about 5 steps. So is that what you're taking us through here already? Is the pause in all the different quadrants, or
So the
you want to walk
pausing
us through
model
here?
is a part of the planning, being aware of your style that you naturally start in and knowing you're going to have to go through them all. So in the 5 steps, the first step is to set your intention.
Oh,
So
yes.
if I'm in conflict with somebody, what do I want? And it's not just I want them to stop. It's like go 5 layers deep. What do you really want and why is that important? And get to the root cause. For me, I have 3 values that I like to be guided by, and it's caring, connection, and curiosity. If I
Wonderful.
let connection guide me in all of my workplace relationships, my heart-centered intention is that I actually don't want to be in stress with you. I don't want to be in disconnection. I want to make sure we can work alongside each other. That's truly my intention.
Wonderful. And that having that clarity would change how maybe willing we are to be uncomfortable a little bit to create that. Mm-hmm.
So we could, if my intention, if I set my intention as I just want them to stop, you can already see that the planning is probably not going to involve, I'm going to take responsibility and have a conversation for some people. For some people, it's going to be, I'm going to go to the manager, I'm going to go to HR, I'm going to quit my job, I'll ask for a transfer. There's a physical removal that they might go down the path of planning. So this is why the intention first is so important, because if my intention is connection and to work alongside, my planning looks very, very different.
Good point. Yes. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's where the pausing model comes in. Is part of the planning is recognizing, where am I right now? And you can use those same two questions to ask, where are they right now? Knowing that when you start the conversation, so if let's just say I'm in pausing energy, to solve my conflict with you, I have to step into speaking energy and ask you to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to dance through all of these energies as you will, so that we can get to resolution.
So this sounds somewhat to me like a alternate dispute resolution, conflict management type thing, but it sounds like you're empowering people to go through this themselves, right? Versus being facilitated.
Yes. I think that's where the responsibility has to be. I don't believe organizational change happens at the top. It happens with you and me. If we take responsibility for our own actions, our own thoughts, our own being in this relationship, then we have choice. And choice is where power is. Absolutely.
And I believe we should all be empowered at work and feel that we're able to make, a positive place. So what if somebody's not receptive?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
This is okay. So the thing is, everyone gets their choice as to when they're ready. Everyone gets their choice as to how they engage and start the process of conflict resolution. So I may be ready, but you may not be ready. And so when I come to you and I step into that speaking energy and ask you for some time, you may not be ready. You might still be in your fight or flight camp. And so then I can put boundaries around what safety looks like for me within this relationship until you're ready. That becomes part of the planning process.
Yes. Okay.
To not own your reaction,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can only control me, and I can open up the stage in the most non-defense arousing way I can in bringing this to you in a really safe way, hoping that you will also want to engage.
Well, and if you're approaching this person with the desire for connection and with that positive intention, I could imagine that the success of that landing well so much higher than if, it's sort of an aggressive.
Yes. The research shows actually, the research shows that 85% of the time the issues resolve with the first conversation.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great news.
It's because we have more bad days than bullies, and it's all about intention, right? Wow. So if you walk past my path and I got some stink on me and you happen to get a little bit on you when you walk by, and you come to me the next day and say, hey, Tammy, can we talk about that? And you share your ideas, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? It totally was out of line, because my intention was not to share that stink with you. You just walked through it.
Right. Yes.
That's why most of them resolve.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear, because I would have thought it'd be the opposite, honestly. In my life career and people that I've been around, and I know people have gone through, the kind of conflict that has been building for years, and then they're trying to deal with it, that didn't really, I haven't seen many of those resolve well. So with this high level of resolution, that is hope's the wrong word, but it's sort of reassuring that, making an effort to communicate with somebody if something's happening that doesn't feel good, is actually likely to be successful. So that is also kind of, encouraging for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So that's part of the planning, right? There's a lot of elements in planning, and this can happen in an instant, or this can be over days, like as you really put some thought into what is it I really want, and how will I approach this person, knowing the context, and how much time do I think I'm going to need? When should we do this? Should anybody else be involved? Should I practice with somebody? It's all part of the planning stage. And then the third step Super, super important, because I don't know about you, but there's been many times in my life where I thought, okay, I'm going to talk to that person when I see them next.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come into my view and I don't say anything.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
I decide, maybe not today.
Yeah.
And then I go back into my pausing energy, right?
Right.
But the third step is a gut check.
Oh, okay.
It's to remind yourself and get back aligned into your intention as to why you started all this planning in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it important to you? What were you hoping to accomplish? What was your intention? So that gut check will help you move into the fourth step, which is doing.
Okay.
Right? Speaking up and saying, hey, Sarah, I want to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Going to help propel you into that next step that's so important to get to resolution.
Yes.
And,
And I can see the gut check being that kind of that getting you through to action move. So if I can reiterate what we've got, we had the pause. Was that the
pausing
first one?
model is just where am I energetically in this conflict?
Okay. Yeah. So is that the step one then? And
that's
step two is planning?
Awareness.
Okay.
And that would come in your planning step, is to identifying where am I and where are they? Because when you know where they are, if you were speaking, for example, I use pausing and speaking a lot because those are the really easy ones to spot.
Mm-hmm.
If you were speaking, I know you need to be validated. Because I know that, my superpower is I'm going to come to you and I'm going to make sure you feel validated before I get into asking, before we get into exploring options, because you need to feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
I know that about you because I know that about me when I'm in that energy.
Right.
So that's my superpower. Yeah. That's
Love
part
it.
of planning.
Gotcha. Okay. So can you maybe just step us through the ones we've done, just the words, and then we'll wrap up the fifth one?
Yes. Yeah. Step one was setting your intention and going like
5 layers. Thank you. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Go deep as to what it is you really want, the core value, the core issue.
Okay.
Step two is the planning, which there's a lot of pieces that go into that. Mm-hmm. Being aware of our energy is one of those things.
Okay.
Step three, once you've kind of figured out what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, what you'd like to have as an outcome, is to do your gut check. Because when that opportunity comes, your legs might be shaken, and that's normal. Yeah. That's that fight or flight energy wanting to pull you back into your camp. But you need to stay in the center. The center is the center of the model is the engagement piece.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go into doing. Step four, step into the conversation. And after you're done doing, we always need to reflect. And this is a part that a lot of people don't do. So that's the fifth step. Mm-hmm. What worked, what didn't work, how did I feel? Like when I'm nervous, I forget a lot of everything that just happened. So, because I'm just in the moment of doing, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here right now. So reflecting is important to hone the richness from the experience. Right.
And hopefully build for the next time and integrate all that learning. That's a beautiful model. And I appreciate having a structure to move through, because these types of things can be so emotional sometimes, right? And it can be easy to kind of get lost in it. So to have sort of a natural kind of progression is really powerful. So I'm really appreciating the opportunity to learn this from you today. And I'm sure everyone else watching will have taken away much as well. So I'm just wondering if there's any kind of final thoughts before we wrap up here today.
I just think you need to know that you can do this. I think, just remember when you were born, you didn't know how to crawl or walk or speak, but you did that without apology. Like you just moved forward. It was like it was your mission. Make good, healthy relationships your mission and just move forward unapologetically and take the opportunities. I would say practice in small areas where you don't feel threatened so much, but that's maybe a little nagging thing like, my spouse always leaves the socks on the floor and I've never spoken up about it. Try in those small moments to feel and put it on so that when the big moments come, you already kind of practice this muscle and there's some memory there.
That's a really good point. Also, because if we don't address things when they're small, they can get big, right? So if we can kind of take care of things when they're minimal, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. And build that skill set. So how can people find out more if they want to explore more of this information with you?
Yeah, I mean, they can check out the website and connect with me directly, tammydunnett.com. I can share about the safe conversation starters.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I'll link everything below the video too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the safe conversation starters, that's a free download. You're going to get 10 scripted responses. So one of the most common questions I get is, I don't know what to say. But more importantly is, I don't know what to say that's not going to create more drama. I really want to make sure that what I'm bringing to the table is representative of who I really am. And so this comes from a research study from 2004, Dr. Martha Griffith. She had created some scripted responses, measured it, and the success rate was phenomenal. It's actually higher than 85%, very small study.
Wow.
But those scripted responses, I have taken them out and just taken a few like edits to them because this was a healthcare setting and I wanted them to be relevant to everybody.
Oh, wonderful.
And so the reference is in there too if you want to read the article and see the data on that. But this is a way that you can bring up, so the 10 most offensive behaviors in the workplace, there's a script for each one. So nonverbal, eye rolling, sighs, sarcasm, backstabbing, scapegoating, infighting. For each one of those things that you might be up against, there's a safe way to bring up that issue.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes that sounds
really helpful. Yes.
Sometimes just to end the conversation, but also other times to explore it.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I can't wait to dive into that. I'm sure everyone else will really find that powerful as well. So thank you for sharing today, Tammy. This is great. I would love to talk about this stuff with you more, but this has been a great introduction to your work and your expertise. And I know it's so needed just so that we can all have healthy workplaces and we can be happy in our lives, right? There's no need to be having things go undealt with, so we don't need to suffer, right? So I'm really taking away this empowerment and that self-awareness piece, and then how you can go through something small or big, in an intentional way. So thank you so much for sharing. That's wonderful.
You're welcome. I just want to end on one quick last point, because I know there are situations, as you mentioned, what do you do when they won't engage? So I just want people to remember you have the power of choice. Right? You manage yourself and you have the choice as to whether or not this relationship is one you want to try again with.
Yes.
And
okay.
If it's a job you want to stay in, right? So you exercise your choice and your decision points all the way through, and stay in your power, stay in your values, protect your boundaries.
Wonderful. So maybe if we could just kind of follow that thought a little bit further. So if you have made an effort and it's not being received, then that's very different than not making an effort in the first place. Right. I can see that sort of, it's an empowered trying to work things out. And if somebody else isn't receptive, then like you said, that's not necessarily our responsibility, and that makes a different situation then from there.
Yeah. You don't own their decisions. You own your decisions.
But the empowerment that comes through that either way is powerful. And I think that, one can easily feel disempowered if things aren't going well within relationships. So taking that, that empowered state is great. And I appreciate you guiding us through how to do that in a really thoughtful and realistic way. So thank you very much. It's been great to chat today, Tammy. I'm sure everybody's going to love this content. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.